In the year 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. Most history books treat this as the end of Rome, the end of the ancient world, the beginning of the Dark Ages. But here is what most history books leave out. Rome didn't die. It moved to a city called Constantinople, sitting on a narrow strip of land where Europe meets Asia, where the Black Sea meets the Mediterranean, where East meets West. And from that city, a Roman Empire kept going for 1,000 more years. We call it the Byzantine Empire. And it is not just a story of military survival or religious endurance. It is a story of economic genius. Because while Western Europe collapsed into poverty, illiteracy, and feudal warfare, Byzantium ran the most sophisticated economy in the medieval world. Its gold coin was trusted from England to India. Its markets made Constantinople the wealthiest city on earth. Its financial system funded armies, walls, and diplomacy across 1,000 years of existential crisis. How did they do it? And why did it eventually end? That is what we are going to find out today. To understand the Byzantine economy, you need to start with a coin. In 312 AD, more than a century before the Western Empire fell, the Roman Emperor Constantine introduced a new gold coin. He called it the Solidus. It weighed 4.5 grams of nearly pure gold, and it was minted to an extraordinarily precise standard. For the next 700 years, the Byzantine Solidus barely changed. Same weight, same purity, same design standard, generation after generation. This sounds like a small thing. It was not. In the medieval world, currency was chaos. Kings debased their coins, adding cheaper metals to stretch supplies and cover debts, so frequently and so aggressively that merchants across Europe could never be sure what a coin was actually worth. Trust was essentially impossible. The Solidus was different. Merchants from the Arab world, from the Frankish kingdoms of Western Europe, from the Kievan Rus in the north, from traders along the Silk Road, all of them accepted Byzantine gold without question. Medieval Arabic sources called it the dinar al-rum, the Roman gold piece. It didn't matter that you were thousands of miles from Constantinople. If you held a Byzantine solidus, you held something universally trusted. Economists today compare this to the US dollar's role as the global reserve currency. For over 700 years, Byzantine gold was what dollars are now, the baseline of international commerce. This trust didn't happen by accident. The Byzantines maintained it through extraordinary fiscal discipline, controlling minting, taxing trade, and managing state finances with a bureaucratic sophistication that had no equal in the medieval world. The solidus was the foundation. But to fund an empire that survived 1,000 years, Byzantium needed more than just a good coin. It needed a way to pay for its armies without bankrupting itself. And for that, it invented one of the cleverest military economic systems in history. Maintaining a professional army is expensive. It was expensive in the ancient world. It is expensive today. The late Roman Empire had nearly bankrupted itself trying to pay for its legions. Mercenaries were unreliable. Tax revenues were never enough. Military spending was a constant financial crisis. Byzantium solved this problem with a system called the themes. The empire was divided into large administrative military districts called themes. Each theme was governed by a military commander, a strategos, who was responsible for both civil administration and military defense. Crucially, the soldiers who defended each theme were not paid in the conventional sense. Instead, they were granted plots of land, called military holdings within the theme. They farmed this land, fed their families from it, and in return, they were obligated to show up for military service when called, bringing their own equipment. This was revolutionary. It meant that the empire did not need to pay salaries to tens of thousands of soldiers from the central treasury every year. The land paid the soldiers. The soldiers defended the land. The system was self-sustaining. The themes also had a significant economic side effect. By distributing land to military families across the provinces, Byzantium created a large class of small to medium landholders, productive farmers who paid taxes and consumed goods. They had a direct personal stake in the empire's survival. This is economic stability most medieval states never achieved. While Western European feudalism concentrated land in the hands of a tiny nobility, the themes system created a tax-paying middle class. Combined with the trusted gold currency, the themes gave Byzantium a military that largely funded itself, and a tax base broad enough to sustain the state through centuries of crisis. But the empire's greatest economic asset was not its army or its currency. It was its location. Sit a map of the medieval world in front of you and look at it carefully. Trade from China and Central Asia flowed west along the Silk Road. Trade from India and the Persian Gulf moved north through the Middle East. Trade from the Black Sea moved south. Trade from the Mediterranean spices, textiles, precious metals moved east. Every single one of these routes passed through or near one place: Constantinople. The city sat on the Bosphorus Strait, a narrow waterway that was the only passage between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. If you wanted to move goods between Europe and Asia by sea, you went through Constantinople. There was no alternative. The Byzantines understood exactly what they had, and they monetized it ruthlessly. The empire levied a commercial tax, the komerkion, on goods entering and leaving the empire. Every merchant ship passing through Byzantine waters paid a toll. Every market transaction within Constantinople was subject to imperial taxation. The city itself was a staggering commercial hub. At its peak, Constantinople was home to perhaps 500,000 people. It had dedicated market districts, state-regulated guilds, and a harbor infrastructure capable of handling hundreds of ships simultaneously. The Byzantines also controlled the production and trade of luxury goods that the medieval world desperately wanted. Silk, above all. For centuries, Byzantium held a monopoly on silk production in the Christian world. The secret of how to raise silkworms, smuggled out of China by monks, gave the empire an extraordinary economic weapon. Byzantine silk was not just a luxury product. It was diplomacy. It was bribery. It was the currency of international power. Byzantine emperors sent silk robes to foreign rulers, a gesture that simultaneously displayed generosity and demonstrated economic superiority. Constantinople was the commercial center of the entire medieval world for the better part of 1,000 years. And yet, even this extraordinary system had a breaking point. The Byzantine Empire did not collapse suddenly. It eroded. Slowly, over centuries, its economic foundations were eaten away. The first major crack came in the 11th century, after a catastrophic military defeat at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. Byzantium lost large portions of Anatolia. This was the heartland of the themes system, where most military landholders lived and farmed. Losing Anatolia meant losing the agricultural base. The empire was forced back to expensive mercenaries, spending gold it no longer had. The second crack came from its allies. In 1082, Emperor Alexios III granted Venice sweeping trade privileges to secure military help. Venetian merchants flooded Constantinople. Byzantine merchants could not compete, and tax revenues from trade collapsed across the empire. The third blow came in 1204, when the Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople, stripping centuries of accumulated wealth from the city. In 1453, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II breached the walls with gunpowder artillery. The thousand-year empire finally ended. But the legacy did not end. Byzantine scholars fleeing to Italy carried ancient Greek and Roman texts, directly sparking the Renaissance. Byzantine economic practices, stable gold currency, and sophisticated taxation were adapted by Italian city-states to build modern European capitalism. Byzantium lasted 1,000 years because it understood that stable currency, a productive population, and global trade sustain a civilization. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe to OPI Vault. We explore the economic systems that built and broke history's greatest empires.